In this video, I want to talk about right-angled triangles and how to label them. So a right-angled triangle is a triangle that has one of its angles, one of its three angles. This one here, in this case, is a 90-degree angle. So a right-angled triangle means that one of the angles is 90 degrees. So for example, this is the symbol for right angle, or you can have 90 degrees. So this is a right-angled triangle. Now, if I was to ask you which side, without even measuring, but just looking, which side, the bottom or the right or the slanty one, which of those three sides do you think is the longest side of a triangle? Well, it turns out that the longest side is always straight across from the 90 degrees. If you could imagine the 90 degrees, opposite the 90 degrees or straight across from the 90 degrees is always what we call the longest side. The longest side. And the longest side has a fancy name in maths. The longest side is called the hypotenuse. I'm going to write that here. It's hypotenuse. Don't worry too much about the spelling of it, but hypotenuse is the name of the longest side. For short, I often call it just capital H. H for hypotenuse. And to label a right angle triangle, it's always really important that you can always find out the longest side and label it either H. In some textbooks they call it A, little a. In some I call it H, capital H. Now, once you've located the longest side, and remember the trick is to find the longest side, it's always across from the 90 degrees, always across from the 90 degrees. And then the other sides here and here are just called the other sides, the other sides. Later on, we're going to call one of them O for opposite. And we're going to call the other one A, which stands for adjacent. But for now, for using Pythagoras' theorem, the main side that you need to know is the longest side, which in this case is capital H or little a. Sometimes we call the opposite and the adjacent just B and C. So you got A, B and C. Okay, but the most important letter is always getting your longest side. So to show you what I mean by labeling a triangle, I'm just going to show a few examples here of triangles that may be given to you in a textbook or in a problem. What they all have in common is I've got 5 different examples, and what they all have in common is they are all right-angled triangles. Let's look at example 1. You've got a right angle here. We want to label our three sides. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to label them H, O, and A. Okay, so the first one we always start off with is H. We need to always find our hypotenuse, H. And the hypotenuse is always the longest side. Now, you might look at this triangle and say, how am I to tell which is the longest side? Well, there's a trick. The longest side will always be across from the 90 degrees. So here's the 90 degrees. So the longest side will be here, H. And then the other two, we don't really care which one we call O and which one we call A. If you want, you can call this one O and this one A, or this one O and that one A. It doesn't matter. The most important side to get right is your H. In example 2, our right angle is here. And we got a side that's 6 long, a side that's 8 long, and a side that is X long. And X is a mystery here, obviously. However, we know for a fact that 8 will be the longest. And that's going to be your H. How do we know that? Because, again, it's straight across from the right angle. And that means that 6 and X are your other sides. Let's call this one O and this one A, or vice versa. So H is the most important one. In example 3, we have a triangle that has no lengths given. However, we can still label it. Here is our right angle. So straight across from the right angle is the hypotenuse, H. And then the other sides, let's call it O and A. In example 4, the right angle is here at the bottom. So the triangle is upside down and turned around. Straight across from that is 5. This will be the hypotenuse. 5 is the hypotenuse. And then the others are just O and A, or the other way around. Example 5, the most important side is the hypotenuse. Where will that be? Well, it's straight across from the right angle. Z will be the hypotenuse. And then X and Y, it doesn't matter what order, is O and A. And this is how I teach how to label a triangle. So if I ever say to people to label their triangle, what I mean is I want you to identify which one is H which one is O, and which one is A. In some books, especially yours, they don't use H, O, and A. What they use is A, B, and C, and they call A the hypotenuse. So if I was to do all these questions again using A, B, and C, I would call the H here is A, and then B and C don't really matter. In the example 2, A is your hypotenuse, A, and then B and C don't really matter. In this one, question 3, the hypotenuse is A, and then B and C don't really matter. In this one, A is the hypotenuse, and then B and C. And then in this one, this would be A for the hypotenuse, and then B and C. The B's and C's don't really matter which one you call B and which one you call C. However, getting your hypotenuse or letter A is the most important. If you prefer to stick with H, O, and A, by all means do that. If you prefer A, B, and C, that is fine as well. In the next video, I will show you how to use Pythagoras' theorem.